How's it going, guys? It's illumignostic, and let me turn my monitors off because there's no reason for me to hear that echo. Good to be here. I haven't been making as much content of late because of the retreats, but I have about a 2-month break, so I'm going to start cranking out a lot of new content. I'm starting a podcast, so there'll be some audio only versions of my content coming out. We just launched our website, which I'm pretty stoked about. Plant medicine products that are coming from Waking Herbs are available there. You can book your retreats there. You can book consultations with me there. So super cool. Super happy to have have that. Yeah, so I realized that I hadn't really done a lot of metaphysical content in a while. And most of what I call metaphysical content isn't actually metaphysical content, because metaphysics is really just the why question. It's kind of been bastardized to cover sort of all of the different phenomena and ideas of spirituality, and that's not really what pure metaphysics is. If you're interested in some pure metaphysics, some really solid pure metaphysics, I did a commentary video to Aleister Crowley's commentary on commentary of the Book of the Law, and there is one chapter in particular where it says every number is infinite, and these chapters in the Book of the Law are one line. We could call them verses, I guess. 3 chapters, it's a verse, I suppose. At any rate, though, that particular comment is a great example of pure metaphysics. But you know, I like to keep things streamlined and sort of simple in my world, and concise, and sort of cut to the chase without a lot of pomp and extraneous fluff. And really, the big central secret of consciousness and the universe is light in the oscillating wave. That is really where to direct your attention if you would like to have a dialogue with the universal mind. This is something it's very difficult for me to explain exactly how this happened in my own case, because I'm not entirely sure. For one thing, I know of catalysts that sort of accelerated my progress, but in my experience, it's as if I've always had a dialogue with some sort of preternatural internal narrator that is not always present, but is always telling the truth, and sometimes has knowledge of like future events that are accurate. It's never steered me wrong. The only time that I've gone wrong is when I have refused to adhere to this narrator. But I do also know that once I became consciously aware of the importance of the sun and the phenomena of light, and I had something I called the starseed vision, which has no relationship to the popular conception of starseeds. Honestly, I don't even know what that is. I assume that it has something to do with being an alien avatar, but I don't even know what it is. While we're on the subject, though, it is interesting to note that the idea of starseeds actually didn't originate with a New Ager. It originated with Dr. Timothy Leary when he was in prison in 1974. He had a group of people get together, and they received transmissions, I believe, that were supposed to be from Sirius, which is where this stuff is always coming from. Whether you're talking about the Sequoia drinking ayahuasca and having a dialogue with Sirius, or this African tribe, the name is the Dogon, I believe it is. Sirius, Dogon tribe, dog star. It's just silly. You can't make this stuff up. And this is a tribe, by the way, that has an accurate star chart of a star system 7 star systems away. So, your proof will be your success. And in that case, it's kind of like you have to take them seriously. And then we have, of course, the Hopi with the Blue Star prophecy. We have the Blue Star of the Masonic Lodge. Sirius is definitely seriously involved in whatever this series of revelations is. But that brings us back to the idea of our own star. And at some point, I became acutely aware that our consciousness, our soul, the sun, S-O-L, the soul, S-O-L plus a U. You know what I mean? This is what was meant by the Dilated Peoples hip hop group way back in the early 2000s, I think, when they said, signs, symbols, hints, clue, the writing's on the wall, but the rest is up to you. It is incredibly true. There are breadcrumbs all over the place. And the truth really, truly is hidden in plain sight. In point of fact, because our sight is dependent upon radiation, which comes to us from light, the secret of light is hidden in the light. Or you could even say it's hidden from our sight by our sight. Mystical paradoxes, man. People think that it's gibberish, but it's really not. It just is. You have to rise to a certain vantage point before you can understand the paradoxes. You can't resolve them, but you can sort of understand it. But yeah, so the idea that stars are conscious beings that emit consciousness on their rays and not just light hit me sometime, I think, in 2010 or 2011. And it, again, hidden in plain sight. All around the world, all throughout history, we had all these sun-worshipping cults. And beyond the sun-worshipping cults, if you look at the mystical doctrines of, the Phoenicians, the Babylonians, the Aztecs, the Jews, even the Christians, although they are loath to admit it, light is the ever-present messenger, if not the actual manifestation of the living deity, right? When we have Jesus walking on water, it's pretty obviously a reference to sunlight walking on water, dancing on the water. What else walks on water? Nothing, only sunlight. Right? 3 days I don't even want to go through it all. It's so trite at this point. You know what I mean? But that, and by the way, I suspect sometimes that is one of the most effective ways that the powers that be have managed to conceal the truth, is by putting it right in people's faces. Because what happens is that, as Terence McKenna said, if the truth can be understood or told, if the truth can be told so as to be understood, it will be believed. That we all have this knowledge in every cell in our body, going back to even before the Big Bang. And by the way, Terence McKenna did not conceive of that. Timothy Leary, way back in the late 1960s, said that, if you took enough LSD and brought your filters and your nervous system down enough, you actually can experience remembering all the way back to the Big Bang and even earlier than that. But that's what Terence McKenna was actually referencing when he said that. And so the trick with these religions that are deceptions and actually serve to preclude real spiritual experience rather than precipitating it, the reason that people believe them so strongly is because the light is barely masqueraded as a person. And so because this truth is right underneath of the surface and everyone knows the truth when they see it, there's this resonance, this recognition of having come face to face with God in these scriptures, which are, basically the most blasphemous writings on earth. To engineer a spiritual system with the intent of occulting the truth of spirituality is up there with the evilest things you can do without actually physically harming someone. And if you think about how much physical harm it's led to, I don't really know that it's any better at all. By the way, this is an interactive session, so if you guys have any questions or comments, the chat has been eerily silent tonight. But yeah, so I'm just trying to remember what I wrote in the description because that's how that's what I'm trying to address. And I'm also trying not to be too redundant. I don't want to talk about the same stuff over and over again on this channel. But one thing that is worth reiterating, because it gives you a very clear picture of what scientific illuminism was about and what actually happens if you are able to follow a stringent, disciplined protocol and have the courage to think critically and to be skeptical and to subject your own ideas to very thorough analysis, right? Like everyone does this. You get attached to your beliefs. They're one of your most treasured possessions. A lot of people don't realize that that's because we have instinct integrated into our belief systems. So when you threaten a person's belief system, you're not just threatening their delusions, you're threatening their life. And this, explains a lot of human behavior, but it really takes a profound understanding of psychology to really understand what it is that we're up against when we talk about trying to re-engineer. I don't want to say faith, because I don't like faith at all. If you drink and dance all night with doubt, you will find her a virgin in the morning. And if you drink and dance all night with faith, you will find a corpse in your arms upon awakening. My opinion on 5-MeO and non-duality. Well, there are ways to access the absolute to a certain extent. And the great metaphysical puzzle that, this idea is present in the mystical systems of all of the major religions that I'm aware of. And even there are traces and hints of it in the Shuar creation story in South America, where there's this idea that an idea sent something vibrating, and that vibration created light, basically the oscillation of the wave. And of course, we know now that that's true. And if you are looking for an invisible force that could compel chaotic energy to order, an oscillating wave imparts symmetry, because if you divide it in the middle and it oscillates, it's symmetrical on both sides. And that is what order is. Order is just symmetry, right? So because time is an illusion, this moment before consciousness made a bad bargain and became aware that it existed, basically before that eheye moment in Hebrew, I am, I am that I am, but the original, thought was supposed to be I am. Before that, there was this absolute nothingness, and that's one of the secret revelations of what God really actually is, according to the Western mysteries and the Judeo-Christian mess, and the Hindus have it as well. It's pretty obviously true, I think, and it's not that hard to understand why it's so ubiquitous. And so, because time is naught, it is possible to remove the central processing unit, and the filters that are actually the main function of our mind and nervous system, right? We think of it as this information gathering network. But really what it's doing is filtering most of the incoming input down to something manageable and perceptible. I mean, if you think about an object, it is really defined by its limitations. It's defined by where it is not, right? Those are its borders, and its depth, and all of that is largely defined by what it isn't and where it's not. So we are able to have something perceptible because we are perceiving the limitations of the energy that has temporarily taken the form of mass, right? And again, all of that mass is light in a standing wave. It's all frozen light. So there are only two things in the universe: nothing and light, void and light. That's it. There's nothing else, really. It's just, light and void. That's it. So there is a point or a place or a state where there is only that void. And that is what God actually is. That's the secret doctrine, that God is actually nothing. In Morals and Dogma by the 33rd degree Freemason Albert Pike, he at one point takes on the perspective of deity. And he says, the Phoenicians thought me light, but I am nothing. And nothing is written in all capitals and in bold. And that's how Mason's like, when something's like really holy and important, all caps and big bold stands off the page. I am nothing. And if you think about the concept of perfection, if you have, and you also take into consideration that all that is metaphor, right? So darkness is literally evil, right? That's what the veil between worlds does, right? It translates this stuff and gives it form, because in its essential fundamental aspect, it's only meaning, right? And then there's a veil, the physical world, that gives it form. And so to go back to this question about 5-MeO-DMT, what I think 5-MeO-DMT is doing is, in the case of even a very large dose of psilocybin or a very large dose of LSD or one of these a huge dose of ayahuasca even, there's still perception, there's still experience. It may be very intense hallucinations and all of this stuff. It may not even be hallucinations. It could be a window into another world, which is sure the hell how it seems. But in the case of 5-MeO-DMT, the filters, their settings have been changed with, say, psilocybin or LSD, right? So the filters have been turned down. In the case of 5-MeO-DMT, they've been turned off. So rather than experiencing a more holistic version of reality where there are perceptible energies, there may be beings that cloak themselves in energy in order to have form, in order to communicate with us. I've many times watched these ayahuasca spirits that I'm not convinced objectively exist, by the way, but, as far as my subjective experience goes, give themselves form by using the network of colored energy in the air to wrap it around themselves until it's dense enough that I can see them. The first time I saw this happen, it was one of the first times I drank alone, because it's part of the process of becoming a facilitator or a shaman. And it's also when we get our songs, we're alone, because you can't have any other consciousness in the room contributing vibrations. And you know what I mean? You just need to be alone and not self-conscious, not aware of yourself, not putting on a performance. You're just alone, beating the drum until a song comes. And so I was beating the drum and waiting for the song. And as I was starting to get something going, this thing sort of curled all of the network, like the net of being, I guess, the energy into a sort of cloak that gave it a perceptible form. And it had like this sombrero looking hat, and it leaned like its forehead right on my forehead and was like, yeah, what else you got? What else? And I'm trying to, it was one of the most intimidating experiences I've ever had in my life, honestly. A couple times I have been confronted by spirit beings that shook me up a little bit and made it difficult for me to continue focusing. By the way, you guys, do me a favor, hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon, because we are demonetized and YouTube does not help me. So I need your help if you want me to continue to make content. When you use ayahuasca tryptamines, do you tend to go high dose, like out of the body high dose, or lower? Jacob, that depends on my intentions. Usually, no, I'm not going out of body. For me, at this point in my life, I'm 44 years old. I've been using psychedelics off and on since I was 15, maybe 14. I can't really recall. For me, it's not, I've already been to, duality or unity consciousness, and I've interacted with enough hyperdimensional machine elves. And, for the most part, I am usually drinking ayahuasca lately only when I'm facilitating, because I have to. And it allows me to see what's going on with people and to manage the energy in the room without having to interrupt people by interacting with them directly. Just may sound Iahuma. That's Iahuma. Mr. Charles has just left a little while back. He was here at Jungle Gnosis retreats, which are still booking, by the way, and we finally have a website, junglenosis.com. So check that out. A lot of the plants that I use are available from my neighborhood on that website. So, but what I was saying is I usually drink only enough to where I can see what's happening in the room. If I'm drinking alone, then I might drink a full dose where I can actually perceive spirit beings. I might use a little bit of Sananga to sort of ramp up the visions a little bit, or a lot sometimes. The first time I put Sananga in my eyes, I could suddenly see these cliffs that were like 10,000 miles tall somehow, and there were faces with flames, and they looked real, like real flames bellowing out of the eyeballs of these things. And it didn't even occur to me that I had just put fire in my eyes and I'm having this vision of these things with these flaming eyeballs. But yeah, Sananga a lot of times will bring you up to that level of almost unity consciousness. It gives you great night vision and stuff. It's really strange. But yeah, I usually don't take that kind of dose. I definitely don't usually take that kind of dose. Iahuma is not really technically a DMT entity, although, you know, anyone that has seen DMT entities knows the aesthetic of them, and that guy there definitely has that aesthetic. And so, you know, we are talking about ayahuasca drinking people, so I assume that they became aware of Iahuma during an ayahuasca experience, because that's when you see spirits that look like that. But Iahuma is actually a tree here that is extremely important medicinally for the tribes and spiritually. A lot of these medicines are viewed as holistic treatments. So, you know, in Western medicine, there is no soul, there is no spirit, there is no energetic body to deal with. So we're only looking at symptoms generally. Healing is not even really of interest to the pharmaceutical companies, because if you cure someone, then they get better and then they stop paying you. I think with HHU, usually I see it, but you know, Quechua has only been written for a little while now, and I don't think it matters. But Iahuma, yeah, train of thought went out the window. But we were talking about light and stars, and the fact that, you know, if you're trying to approach metaphysics as if you are a detective, right? You're looking to eliminate possibilities. That's really one of the main tools in the detective's toolkit, right? You're just eliminating possibilities. And a lot of people, you know, that become spiritual, or however you want to think about it, they just really allow all these possibilities to exist, and that's fine, but it's not real, and it doesn't do anything for you. Believing in things that are not true doesn't, I mean, it can seem to help you, but in my opinion, it's not the way to go. It just isn't the way to go. Truth is self-substantiating, and it has real substance and can transform and transport and transmutate. But falsehood is just inertia, and it doesn't really do much. And oftentimes its appearance of helping is one of those Satan coming as an angel of light type scenarios. So for me, I prefer to pursue this with a detective's mindset. And some of this is really easy. So if you were trying to find the source of consciousness, which is like the hard problem of neuroscience, you run out of what is the word for suspects? Another word for suspects. You know what I mean? You run out of suspects really quickly, because there are only two things in the universe: light and void, right? So where does light come from? The sun. And then you realize that this SOL with U added to become soul is not a coincidence at all. That there is no possibility, really, that your consciousness is emanating from anywhere but the sun. And so a while back, before we took this detour into psychedelics, I was basically saying that, if you understand that the brain is loaded with magnetite, right? It's like a crazy high percentage of your brain is little tiny crystals that are magnetic. And you also understand, at least like in a really fundamental sense, the relationship between electromagnetism and light. And then you consider consciousness coming from light. And then you realize that the sun has this tremendous density. And therefore, it would be, if all of this is correct, it would be super conscious. So, I saw someone on, I don't know where, talking about how the biblical angels were actually stars. And that was one of the things that kind of occurred to me during this vision, that, I've had the experience of receiving information from Sirius during an ayahuasca ceremony that was not yet known to astronomers until 10 days after the ceremony. There was a paper published. And the thing is, I'm not trained in astrophysics at all. So for me to have just, formulated this stuff that turned out to be accurate astrophysics out of nowhere is not very likely. I mean, you can't say that anything isn't possible. But it was basically that there was going to be a third star in the Sirius binary system, but the influence of the other two stars stopped it from developing from a gas giant to a red dwarf. And that's what I told the people in this teepee, because they have the talking stick and it goes around and everyone talks about what happened. And I told everyone, and two of those people were present when I found that paper. So, that kind of experience really strongly suggests to me that this idea that stars are super conscious is accurate. And so the idea that these three stars are well, one of them's technically not a right on, Mark, technically not a star, right? But it's connected to these other stars to the extent that their presence affected its development, right? So, when you look at the fact that I had these experiences, and then a few weeks later, I found out that the Sequoia, who are one of the ayahuasca drinking tribes in the Amazon, also claim to receive transmissions from Sirius when they drink ayahuasca. And then I realized that the Hopi and the Freemasons identified people who were keepers of the secret knowledge with secret handshakes, and they both have the blue star, which is Sirius, as a predominant symbol in their spiritual practices. And what else? Robert Anton Wilson wrote the book Cosmic Trigger about being telepathically linked to a being from Sirius. And I know I'm missing stuff. I mean, I know there's more. So you see what I'm getting at here? We have this group of two stars and a gas giant that are linked. And we have, medicine men. And Tim Leary was another one that claimed some kind of reception from Sirius at one point, the starseed transmissions. We have this consistent experience of people that are doing similar things with their consciousness, of receiving a very powerfully amplified signal coming from these three connected celestial bodies that would be, just star consciousness amplified to the third power. And the density of we already talked about the density of the stars having a relationship to their consciousness. So, yeah, I mean, that's some shit, right? I mean, I don't know what else to say about it. Yeah, do hit the like button, share, subscribe, support us on Patreon. I hate to say this over and over again, but if I don't, nobody does it. You can send us support via Cash App. You can also come to the retreats. We still have one in July and November that are not fully booked. Determined to book those. So you guys are going to continue to see videos about them and promotional material until they're totally booked. And then I will shut up about it forever because we're only doing the 2 more. We may actually have someone that's coming to do the apprenticeship for 90 days, plus a retreat. So it would be 4 months. In which case, we will probably do, some ceremonies at the end of his apprenticeship because I'm going to have to. So that occurred to me, while I was planning it today that, we're going to have at least some ceremonies, but I probably won't have international people for that. We'll probably work with people that I know here. So yeah, 2 more rounds. So yeah, I mean, I think, we pretty much went through this, and by the way, you guys, these are the secrets of high-level Freemasonry. And if you don't believe me, all you have to do is get your hands on a book of Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike, and then you will understand that when people say that they're Luciferian, the idea that the oscillating wave created the light and therefore is the light bearer, and that's where our consciousness comes from, then a whole bunch of things make sense. And it has nothing to do with anything evil except for the fact that now we're all trapped in duality where, we have a 50-50 divide of darkness and light, and we're just kind of, that's the devil's bargain. Would it have been better to remain in absolute nothingness and perfection, right? Because as soon as you have a stain, you have a shadow, you have a line, you have contour, you have anything at all, that perfection has been stained and disrupted. It's no longer continuous and conterminous with perfection. It has been destroyed. And so when that original nothingness had that one thought, that was when the moment when duality was created. And because of the reflective nature of the process of replication of the energy and the structures of the energy, once that fracture of 50-50 division and duality had been introduced, it was inherent in all the parts of the system. And so you just amplify that ad nauseum, and you have what Buddhists call the 10,000 things, all riddled at this fundamental structural level with a dualistic fundamental basis. Everything contains its contradiction. The yin-yang symbol with the dark and the light, and then there's a little bit of light in the dark side and a little bit of light or dark in the light side. People don't notice that. Nobody mentions that. But it's extremely important to understand, everything contains its contradiction. And you say, well, how does a rock contain its contradiction? Well, apply another element, the element of heat, which in the metaphorical sense is transformation and creation. But in the physical sense, what happens? You apply enough of it, that rock turns to liquid. It becomes water. So everything absolutely contains its contradiction. Well, then you might say, well, what about water? How does that contain its contradiction? Freeze it, and it is hard as steel. Another element of it is that, fire can cut. But if you focus water enough, you can cut diamonds with it. Everything contains its contradiction. And that is because of this dualistic paradox that is ingrained in the fundamental structure of every constituent element of the universe. Every constituent element containing in it the entirety of the rest. And here's the crazy thing about infinity and conversations with number. We can go down a Pythagorean rabbit hole now and really get tedious. I don't think I'm going to, though. But I will say that, 0 even contains infinity. Divide 0 by any number. See where I'm going with this. Even the glyph of 0, it has a line that goes infinitely around in circles, and inside of it there's nothingness. Even the glyph for 0 contains these contradictions. I had more to unpack there. Give me a second to pull my thoughts together. We were talking about infinity. Okay, yeah. And so every number also contains infinity. And they say that the universe is made up of number, which means that at the most fundamental level, you can divide any constituent part of the universe and it will just expand to infinity. We also know that matter is mostly empty space, which means that if you just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, your table, your hand, this microphone, whatever it is, even the most dense, the sun, the most dense thing you can find in the universe, is going to expand infinitely. The smaller you get, the bigger it's going to get. So the all is in the all. This old hermetic axiom that the all is in the all is demonstrably true. And again, we're back to the idea of a pure metaphysical science that actually yields results that you cannot challenge. They are demonstrably true. And this is, I believe, the great lie of the modern spiritual era, that these things cannot be known. And that perception has been deliberately crafted and engineered by your overlords who damn well know better. So, yeah, your success will be your proof. And with this type of system, you can actually demonstrate on paper that the words that are coming out of your mouth have some sort of substantial basis in actual phenomenology. So I think that's probably a good place to hang my hat. If you guys have any questions or anything, any questions about the retreats or any questions about metaphysics or plant medicine, I'll give you guys a few minutes because I have about a 2-minute lag sitting in the Amazon rainforest as I am, and things are not as quick as they could be. So, all right. Well, in that case, thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. Do not forget to hit the like button. Please share, subscribe, join our Patreon, where we go through the writings, formerly secret writings of a 33rd degree Freemason, and analyze and discuss them. That's at least what we've been doing for months, and it's going to continue for at least another month and a half. And then we're going to move on to a higher degree of Freemasonry. So if you're not a patron, join the Patreon. We have like lottery for free retreat. T-shirts are given out every couple of months. The next patron who's been around the longest gets one of my Triclops gear T-shirts. So yeah, I appreciate each and every one of you. Question and answers going once, going twice. I know as soon as I hit that in stream button, somebody's gonna ask something. All right, you guys, 13 viewers and 13 likes. I'm going to go ahead and call it. So we'll see you guys again very, very soon, hopefully here in Ecuador.